Picture a state so vast that you can drive hours without passing more than a handful of homes. In this video, we're looking at the 9 least dense states in America, places that consistently sit at the bottom of population density rankings, and weighing their challenges against their opportunities. Even as the rest of the country grows, these states remain quiet and remote. But that emptiness hides some surprises. One of them is beginning to attract newcomers in unexpected ways. If you enjoy this kind of exploration, feel free to like the video and drop a comment on which quiet state you could see yourself living in. So why do these places stay empty, and what might finally change their path? To find out, let's start with one of the most striking examples. Montana's space without people. Montana stands out immediately because of its scale. The state covers more land than many European countries, yet its population is only about 1.13 million people. That imbalance makes it one of the least densely populated places in the United States. Its borders stretch across everything from rugged mountain ranges to sweeping plains, but between those landscapes are long stretches where nearly no one lives. From above, the map shows big patches of green and brown broken by only sparse dots of towns and small cities, each separated by miles of empty highway. The scenery plays a central role in Montana's identity. The Rocky Mountains dominate the west, while the east is defined by plains that seem to go on forever. Rivers thread through valleys and forests cover wide tracts of land. Visitors often think of the state as wild and unspoiled, and for many people that sense of openness is what makes it appealing. Yet the same vastness that draws new arrivals can also complicate life. Distance is a constant factor, whether measured in hours of driving, limited access to services, or the challenge of keeping communities connected. Weather in Montana creates another layer of difficulty. Summers can swing from warm, pleasant days to heat waves that leave farmland dry and vulnerable. In winter, conditions reverse. Temperatures regularly fall well below freezing, snowstorms build quickly, and strong winds sweep across exposed terrain. Heavy snowfall can shut down travel for days, and heating costs rise during months when the cold does not relent. Together, these seasonal extremes force residents to prepare for unpredictability, shaping a kind of resilience that marks everyday life across much of the state. Distance from amenities defines the routine for many families. A grocery run might involve a drive of 30 miles or more. Access to hospitals gets complicated outside larger urban centers, with some residents depending on helicopter flights or extended ambulance transports for advanced care. Educational opportunities are uneven, since universities are concentrated mainly in Bozeman, Missoula, and a few other hubs. Job markets reflect the same pattern. Agriculture, resource extraction, and service jobs remain spread thin across rural areas, while tech, finance, and professional sectors cluster around just a handful of communities. Still, shifts are underway. In recent years, remote work has given Montana a new visibility. As more jobs detached from office locations, certain counties began to grow. The strongest immigration has centered on Yellowstone County, which includes Billings, the state's largest city at just over 110,000 residents, along with Missoula County and parts of Gallatin County around Bozeman. Improvements in broadband access have allowed some families and professionals to relocate without giving up career options. Instead of being seen as isolated, these urban counties are increasingly described as lifestyle destinations, offering proximity to nature alongside enough infrastructure to support modern work. Bozeman in particular has become a symbol of that change. Once a small agricultural town, it has developed rapidly into a hub for tech startups, outdoor brands, and specialized services. Coffee shops now double as meeting spaces for remote software engineers and creative workers whose clients are spread across the country. Housing demand has spiked, and new construction has become routine on the edges of town. These changes signal how different Montana can look depending on where you stand. But those newcomers have created a problem. What is it? We'll explain in just a moment. The challenges become apparent when compared with the rest of the state. While Bozeman, Missoula, and Billings show signs of growth, many towns on the eastern plains continue to lose people. Job opportunities are limited, and younger residents often move away for college or work, rarely returning. Roads that stretch for hours across rangeland still lack fuel stops or convenience stores. In winter storms, snowplows face impossible distances to clear in reasonable time. Drought years hit ranchers hard, and some regional employers have closed instead of expanded. The uneven distribution of population and economic activity underscores why Montana retains such a low density overall. Even with growth in a few select cities, daily life in rural Montana remains defined by separation. Families keep emergency supplies and backup sources of heat. Many school districts serve only a handful of students, with graduating classes sometimes under 20. Community gatherings, fairs, or sports events are more than leisure. They are crucial social ties stretching across far distances. Life here requires planning and persistence, and most people adapt by relying on neighbors and networks that hold communities together despite physical space. For business operators, Montana presents opportunity combined with seasonal instability. National parks such as Glacier and Yellowstone attract millions during peak months, but visitor numbers can dip sharply in the off-season. Restaurants, guide services, and hotels often experience rapid boom and bust shifts depending on the calendar. Ranchers work with clean air and open ranges, though global commodity markets push down prices in ways local producers cannot fully control. Renewable energy potential, especially with wind and hydro, remains significant but requires long-term investment in transmission lines and support infrastructure before it can consistently add jobs at scale. The newcomers whose income often comes from elsewhere represent a different trend. Many arrive with remote careers in technology, design, or consulting, reducing their reliance on local employers. Some develop new ventures that bridge old and new economies, equipment companies that test outdoor gear in realistic conditions, digital platforms guiding tourists into the backcountry, or shared workspaces in small cities. This blending of tradition with modern industries is still modest in numbers, but it sets the stage for how Montana might continue to evolve without losing its defining characteristics. That evolution sparks debate among residents who have lived in the state for generations. To some, outside arrivals provide welcome energy and financial resources that diversify local economies beyond ranching and tourism. To others, rising housing costs in key counties feel like displacement, threatening affordability for families who grounded communities over decades. Rent in Bozeman or Missoula now rivals mid-sized urban areas across the United States, undercutting one of the main arguments long made for moving into Montana: open space paired with low cost of living. Despite these tensions, the sense of scale remains Montana's most defining feature. Even with surging growth in select cities, the overall numbers leave large stretches almost unoccupied. Compared with crowded metropolitan areas, even visible population increases here leave entire counties with fewer residents than a neighborhood in New York or Los Angeles. The experience for many visitors is not just towering peaks but long drives without radio reception, towns separated by dozens of miles, and an audible quiet broken only by weather or distant trains. Montana highlights both the attraction and burden of abundance. Its land feels infinite while its population feels small. Its seasons impose unpredictability while its towns adapt at different speeds. In its cities, newcomers shape a different future. In its rural spaces, conditions continue much as they have for generations. Both realities coexist within the same boundaries, and together they define why this state still ranks among the least dense in the nation. As one of the largest yet least populated places in America, Montana sets the stage for understanding other regions where land stretches wide, but people remain few. The story continues with another state where that imbalance is even sharper. Wyoming, America's quietest frontier. Wyoming is often described as America's quietest frontier, and the numbers show why. Despite spanning almost 100,000 square miles, its population sits at only about 580,000 people, making it the least populated state in the country. On average, just 6 people live across every square mile, leaving most of the land open, empty, and defined more by wildlife and rugged scenery than by human settlement. Driving across the state, you can pass mountain ranges, wide plains, and rolling desert, all with little sign of activity beyond a gas station or ranch house on the horizon. For residents, the quiet is part of daily life, but it comes with economic realities shaped by both nature and history. The foundations of Wyoming's economy have long rested on energy production and tourism. Under its surface lie some of the country's most extensive coal, oil, and natural gas reserves. Energy extraction built entire communities, most visibly around the Powder River Basin, where large-scale coal mining fueled state budgets and provided thousands of stable jobs. Local taxes from this industry helped fund schools, roads, and public services, so much so that for decades state finances rose and fell with fossil fuel markets. Added to this were public sector positions in government services, which provided stability in a state where private industries remained narrow. Tourism developed as the second pillar, centered on Yellowstone National Park, Grand Teton, and the mountains and valleys surrounding them. Millions of visitors arrive every summer, filling campsites, lodges, and hiking trails. Jackson Hole became the image of wealthy Western living, where luxury resorts stand a short distance from working cattle ranches. The contrast is striking. While Jackson thrives on high-end real estate and tourism, much of Wyoming still resembles small agricultural towns with pickup trucks and local diners lining main streets. But Wyoming's reliance on energy and tourism leaves it exposed. Coal production is slowly declining as natural gas and renewable energy gain market share nationally. Open-pit mines still operate, but they employ fewer workers each year. Younger residents often leave mining towns, hoping for opportunities elsewhere. Oil and gas add more unpredictability, with global price shifts dictating local employment. When oil prices dip, drilling slows, rigs are pulled, and small towns notice the strain immediately. State budgets fluctuate alongside these changes, creating cycles of prosperity followed by cuts. In short, much of Wyoming's economy has depended on two volatile industries, neither of which guarantees long-term stability. Tourism also faces limits. While visitor numbers peak in the summer and during ski season, Wyoming's harsh winters discourage off-season travel. Heavy snow or road closures cut into visitation, and wildfires or flooding have occasionally kept tourists away entirely. Jobs in tourism tend to be seasonal and lower paid, and most are concentrated in certain counties rather than spread evenly across the state. The luxurious Jackson picture is not how the majority of locals experience life, especially in rural towns far from the national parks. Because of this instability, Wyoming has begun exploring new avenues, particularly in renewable energy. Its geography, broad plains and steady winds, makes it ideal for wind projects. Carbon County, for example, hosts large wind farms whose turbines now send electricity into neighboring states like Colorado and Utah. Although renewables do yet rival extraction in total jobs, they represent visible growth in a part of the economy that signals diversification. Training programs are being introduced to prepare workers for jobs in maintenance and operations, serving as an early step toward redefining the state's identity. For Wyoming, even incremental gains matter, since they reduce dependence on coal revenues and reassure younger workers that new careers might exist locally. Tax policy remains another major tool Wyoming uses to draw residents. With no state income tax and some of the lowest overall tax rates in the nation, it is marketed as a haven for retirees, entrepreneurs, and remote workers. Combined with abundant land and relatively affordable housing in most towns outside Jackson Hole, the state offers a financially appealing option for people willing to trade urban conveniences for open landscapes. Broadband infrastructure, long a weakness, is receiving new investment, and this has supported a modest rise in remote professionals relocating to growth centers like Cheyenne and Laramie. Even so, the challenges of living here often outweigh the benefits for many. Hospitals can be hours apart, high schools serve tiny student bodies, and winter closures can delay travel for days. Entertainment and cultural activities remain limited to a few urban pockets, and university-level academic opportunities concentrate around Laramie. These realities keep Wyoming attractive only to certain types of residents: the independent, self-sufficient, and those willing to adapt to a slower pace of life. Still, the trade-off between low taxes and limited services sparks debate. Later in this Wyoming segment, we'll unpack one striking example of how these trade-offs actually play out for families, from tax savings to housing costs, so stick around for that. In national context, Wyoming's quietness feels even sharper when you compare its resident population to its visitor traffic. Yellowstone alone receives over 4 million visitors per year, nearly 8 times the number of people who live in the entire state. Tourists flock to the geysers and mountains, but few seek to settle down permanently. That gap, high visitation rates paired with extremely low residency, is central to Wyoming's paradox. Millions appreciate it, but far fewer call it home. The growing field of renewable energy may change the situation slowly. Expansion of wind farms seems minor compared to decades of coal dominance, but the potential is real. If new projects create skilled jobs that keep young workers from leaving, and if expanded energy exports stabilize state budgets, even gradual progress could give Wyoming a more secure future. The wide basins that once defined coal power may now host the equipment of an emerging energy landscape, suggesting continuity through change. Still, the view from most roads remains unchanged. Small towns separated by miles of rangeland, ranches tucked into valleys, and long, mostly empty highways. For many residents, that landscape is what makes Wyoming worth staying in. Independence and space shape community values. Events like county fairs and rodeos link far-flung towns together, and a sense of resilience grows from coping with harsh winters and limited resources. Yet the very features locals embrace continue to limit broader growth. That tension between preserving an identity and seeking economic renewal defines much of Wyoming's current path. In the end, Wyoming embodies the extremes of what it means to be sparsely populated. Its land is vast, but its communities remain few. Its economy depends on boom and bust cycles, yet it shows early movement toward adaptation. Open space still dominates daily life, but symbols of modern change, wind turbines, broadband cables, shifting demographics, are beginning to appear. The balance between tradition and adaptation remains fragile, but even subtle progress suggests Wyoming may not remain defined by coal alone. This perspective on sparseness highlights how some states hold steady in quiet isolation, while others are starting to shift under modern pressures. In the next case, we see a state with a much smaller footprint, one that's gaining new attention for very different reasons. Vermont rural charm meets rising popularity. Vermont stands out as one of the smallest states in both geography and population, yet in recent years it has gained attention for reasons beyond its size. Since the pandemic, it has quietly reshaped itself from a primarily tourist destination into a place that more people are now choosing to live. Its reputation for calm scenery and close-knit towns has always been part of the draw. But what differentiates Vermont today is how changes in work and lifestyle patterns have altered the balance of who arrives, who stays, and what it means to live there. The state's traditional image revolves around pastoral charm. Rolling hills lined with barns, maple syrup production in spring, ski resorts in the Green Mountains in winter, and town centers built around family-run shops have long defined its identity. Small towns rarely feature major national chains. Instead, communities are stitched together through long-standing relationships and local businesses. Those features built Vermont's reputation as a slow-paced retreat from urban life, and they remain visible. But beneath the postcard image, the story has shifted. For decades, Vermont faced the challenge of limited population growth. Many young adults who grew up there left to pursue strong careers elsewhere, and the state often lacked the industries needed to bring them back. Agriculture, forestry, and small-scale manufacturing anchored the economy, while the ski industry and seasonal tourism provided stability but rarely year-round economic opportunity. That pattern kept Vermont steady but not expanding. Families found that beyond tourism-related jobs and government services, there were relatively few professional pathways. Housing costs added another obstacle. Visitors often assume that small towns equal affordability, but Vermont's reality differs. The presence of second-home buyers combined with limited housing supply elevated prices beyond many local incomes. Property taxes remained high compared with most states, while cold winters translated to significant heating costs. Even basics like groceries were often more expensive than in larger centers due to transportation distances. The result was a long-standing perception. Vermont was an excellent place to visit, but difficult for many working families to settle in permanently. That perception began to change in the early 2020s. Remote work created an opening Vermont had never fully experienced before. When professionals were no longer tied to offices in Boston or New York, places that seemed impractical suddenly became options. Towns long defined by flat or declining populations started to see small but measurable inflows. By 2025, the shift is visible in both state statistics and the lived experience of residents. Burlington, Vermont's largest city, totals about 42,000 residents, tiny compared to most urban centers, but it stands as a clear example of how Vermont has drawn in new arrivals. Entire counties surrounding Burlington, along with ski-adjacent towns in the Green Mountains, now reflect stronger housing demand. The newcomers tend to include professionals with remote-friendly jobs, families seeking smaller and safer communities, and retirees interested in an active outdoor lifestyle. Schools that once struggled with declining enrollment now present small class sizes as a strength. Parents point to safety rankings, which consistently place Vermont among the most secure states in the country. Even though in-migration numbers remain modest compared to national growth hotspots in the South or West, for Vermont, the turnaround is striking. Daily life reflects this adjustment. Coffee shops in Burlington or Montpelier now serve as weekday workspaces rather than just weekend meeting spots. Rural areas have experimented with co-working centers that provide reliable internet access. Community-supported agriculture has connected new arrivals with long-established farms, blending traditional agriculture with new consumer bases. The growth does not erase Vermont's rural character, but it layers digital work and outside income streams onto a framework once dominated by tourism and farming. The economic benefits are tempered by renewed pressure on housing markets. Properties that were once steady in price have risen significantly. A modest single-family home in a ski-town valley may now cost several times the annual income of a local teacher or mechanic. Newcomers, often earning salaries tied to metropolitan cost of living, can outbid local residents for limited housing stock. This tension highlights the challenge facing Vermont. Every gain in economic vitality can coincide with erosion in affordability. For small communities, even a few higher-income households can set off noticeable shifts in pricing. Still, the qualities drawing people in have consistency. Vermont's environmental values align with many remote professionals' preferences. Recycling, environmental protections, renewable energy initiatives, and broad access to outdoor recreation form part of daily culture. Small-scale renewable energy, particularly solar projects and community installations, has grown in recent years and adds an additional dimension to the local economy. Education anchors some professional opportunities through colleges and universities that sustain research, healthcare support, and niche tech-related positions. Vermont is not a technology hub in the traditional sense, but it has carved out focused spaces where digital work connects with rural needs. Cultural dynamics are evolving as well. Farmers' markets that once operated quietly now serve larger crowds of both longtime residents and arrivals from nearby states. Local school boards and town meetings have gained members with professional backgrounds beyond Vermont's traditional industries, broadening the scope of local decision-making. Housing policy, broadband internet expansion, and environmental management now dominate community debates in ways rarely seen 2 decades ago. The result is a hybrid character. Vermont maintains its small-town identity while adapting incrementally to issues tied to greater visibility. For young professionals, the balance is compelling. Vermont provides quick access to outdoor activities, minimal commute times, and a community environment in which social life often centers on shared local events. Small towns may lack extensive entertainment, but they offer a rootedness that residents often find missing in large cities. Families add momentum by stabilizing school systems and supporting small businesses that depend on consistent local demand. In a state where population totals are modest, even small increases in stability have outsized significance. Yet friction remains. Higher-income newcomers exacerbate long-term housing shortages. Healthcare infrastructure cannot expand rapidly given the small tax base and geographic limitations. And the scale of Vermont simply prevents explosive growth. Most residents prefer it that way, but it limits how far in-migration trends can go before they collide with infrastructure capacity. That restraint reinforces the idea that growth in Vermont proceeds at a slow, measured pace, shaped by collective decisions at the town and regional level. By 2025, Vermont illustrates how one of the country's smallest states can shift from stagnation to renewal without ever losing its rural core. Unlike larger frontier states, Vermont's story is not about vast emptiness, but about how limited space can adjust to modest but meaningful inflows. The charm associated with maple syrup farms and Green Mountain winter sports still defines much of daily life. At the same time, the integration of remote work, sustainability, and quality of life motivations shows how a rural state can attract new households without abandoning its traditions. The lesson extends beyond Vermont's borders. A small state once tagged as stable, but aging is now referenced as a case study in sustainable rural living. The emptiness does not vanish. Population density remains low compared to national levels. But that emptiness is reinterpreted as an asset, space that supports stronger community ties while allowing selective adaptation to modern trends. This progress, however, exposes a recurring limitation. As Vermont becomes more desirable, housing affordability strains long-term residents. That dynamic is not unique to Vermont. Other sparsely populated states also wrestle with what happens when even a modest inflow of new households collides with existing housing supply. The next example illustrates a version of this problem from a different angle, where geography and economy shape constraints in another way.